Hey folks, John here from A is for Alcoholic. Today's conversation is a special one for me. It's with my little brother. Now, we don't talk directly about alcoholism. I mean, it comes up plenty, as it does often on this podcast. But what I really wanted to talk to him about was his experience growing up with our father. And I know that alcoholism is a complicated and multifaceted thing. I know that I believe it's an allergy for me, and it was exacerbated and brought on more by my environment, especially growing up with our dad. And I really believe that a lot of the childhood trauma that I endured brought on the alcoholism and all of my addictive behavior in so many different ways. But what was interesting was talking to my brother and getting his whole different perspective. It's really easy to just assume that somebody has the same experience as you, especially a sibling. And for me to find out that he had so many other things, going on in his own mind, and that he was able to find closure on certain things that I still struggle with. And so this conversation revolves mostly around our father, the child abuse that we endured, and how we came to terms with it. And, there's a lot of humor and a lot of love and some dark humor and some tough love, but it's always great to talk to my brother as adults and try and sort through and figure out just what the hell is going on with me and my alcoholism. And I hope that perhaps there's some value in it for you to do the same. So, without further ado, here's a conversation with James Staley, my little brother. One of the things, and we just talked last night about a couple of things that I had no idea about, but I have been trying to figure out where my alcoholism comes from and where my
Are we recording this now, or are we going to start?
Yeah, we're recording.
All right. Well, okay. We just went right into it.
We'll just go right into it.
No, that's great. Is anybody else on this? Is it just you and me?
It's just you and me.
All right. Right on. Just checking. I wasn't sure if there was a...
No, it's not a live feed. No, there's nobody. No.
But is this on?
It's on. But I mean,
how many people are watching this?
Well, I don't know.
Squirrels, maybe?
No, I mean, there's probably dozens and dozens of people, James. I have no idea.
Dozens upon dozens?
I don't know. I think we get a couple of hundred listeners for every new podcast every week.
A couple hundred new listeners?
Maybe not new, but I get a couple of hundred hits, download. I don't know. I have a very difficult time trying to understand it. So, I mean,
metrics on it. All right.
Yeah, that's not my forte. I do my best, but I don't know.
I'm sorry to go off into some other topic. We were talking about where your
That's okay. That's okay. So we
try to stay on task.
Those of you listening will find out very easily that James likes to go off topic.
I like to venture.
Find a tangent. Likes to venture. Well, just that I really feel like my alcoholism. Well, I believe that it was something that was inside of me, like a brain chemistry thing. Like it's inevitable, right? But I also believe that, you and I growing up with Dad and the family life that we had, or the lack thereof, played a huge role in me wanting to, looking for some sort of escape release valve, whether,
imbibe something, whether it be whippets or I don't know what it is, anything to take, just to crank it down a half notch. The vice clamps, just get them down just one half notch, so I can tolerate my existence.
Yeah, and I know that, Dad was, and so I guess too, one of the things, and whatever you're comfortable talking about and whatever you're not, but one of the things is that there's a whole lot of blank spots in my memory growing up. I feel like there's multiple... there are years where I don't have a whole lot of memories. I mean, a lot of people talk about childhood memories, and they're not
growing
there.
Up, you mean childhood memories? You mean between 10 and 15 or 8
and 5 and maybe not that young, but I mean, But
I
yeah,
have
10 and 15, 10 and
I have a
17.
large repository of all that stuff. So if you ever want to know anything,
Well, I mean, I just remember from a very young age, like living in that, we lived in an apartment in Santa Paula. And, I remember like one time mom telling me that dad wasn't coming home for the weekend. And I said, why? And I don't remember how exactly she explained it, but it was basically he had gotten a DUI and he was in jail for the weekend. And I was like, oh, okay, he'll be back on Monday or whatever. I don't know how the fucking laws worked back then. That was, 1982 or
I don't know.
something.
He just left his car
19,
in Las Vegas when it died on the side of the road. There's never any ticket from that.
I don't
The
remember
car,
that. Was he?
no, it's before we were born.
Oh, okay.
Mom's
Yeah.
story said that he just one time just left his car on the side of the road
Yeah.
and just dump it in the desert in Vegas, and nobody, just like bodies, nobody cares.
And I really feel like that was a theme in his life and how he treated everything. Like, well, just leave it alone, just walk away from it. It'll fix itself, And so, I mean, just things like I don't remember, like I remember that Santa Paula. I have a vague memory of like you and I being told that they were getting divorced the first time. Do you remember this? Like
I
that?
was too young for that because
Yeah,
I was
you were
in
like
Santa
3.
Paula. Yeah, I was in Santa Paula. I have distinct memories of Santa Paula.
That's like my thing. One of my first memories that I can go far back enough is remembering being told that my parents are divorcing, and that's 5. There should be more memories. I feel like, and I don't have them. But even growing up, like we left, you know, I don't. We left, and we were. I kind of remember living with dad in that house, and him always drinking. Always, and always being unpredictable and
and
abusive.
that's the not the but one of the biggest issues with drinking is because it's you don't know what the person's going to do. There's no reliability
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, and it just uh, always feeling on edge and in contention with him. And one of the things, it's funny because when I hurt my ankle, I hurt my foot really bad, and I was out of work for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it really stressed me out. But I bought a PlayStation 4 because I wanted something to do. I was just stuck in bed, right? And I'd always had an aversion toward video games, and I think why. Like I fucking hated them, and so like and we
Ghosts
talk
and
about
goblins till midnight.
so explain to the listeners, and this is really bizarre, and I don't know if anybody else ever had this experience, but like
Nobody else ever has that experience, John. Just
our
you and me. That's
father,
it.
who was sick for most of his entire life, he was ill.
Mentally and physically.
Mentally and physically. I mean, he dealt with asthma, and then the drugs that he took for asthma in the 60s and 70s basically ate away at his brain and his joints in that ability to help him breathe. But he got hooked on Nintendo. I remember we went to New Jersey for
I remember
Christmas.
that distinctly. I
And so that
remember
was
that
like
distinctly.
86. And we
86.
got that. And so it was almost as if our dad, was the one who got hooked on video games, and he loved it, I guess, because maybe it distracted him and it kept him away from the
Escapism.
pain. Escapism. So and I don't think he was drinking while he was playing video games. I feel like his drinking and his alcoholism was like sporadic. Like it would stop for a while, and then it would go like super hard, and then it would stop for a while, but he would make us stay up late and watch him play video games, and he would
Well,
make us.
I remember being forced to finish levels because he didn't have the dexterity or the skill to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That was my remember. Like, you have to go and make this jump. I can't make this jump, and I can't beat this character, and I can't solve. I can solve the puzzle, but I can't have my fingers do it. And then, being a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old, if you play video games at that age, you get good at real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So,
like I have memories of knowing that we were going to be forced to stay up and play these video games. And so after dinner, I would like start to make excuses. Like my stomach hurts and I need to go to bed. And I was so like a very early age, I was lying so that I could get out of whatever this punishment was, or having to fucking draw, huge size maps for Legend of Zelda, like it was awful. Like I wanted to go to bed. And I wonder why I have sleep problems.
There weren't magazines then. You can't just go to the store and buy a magazine in 1989 for Legend of Zelda 2.
No.
It didn't exist.
It didn't exist. And so and I wonder why I have sleep problems. But so do you remember all of that? Right? I mean, that was awful.
Vividly. In fact, I told my coworker about that last week, and he said, "What? You mean your dad made you play video games? Usually they don't let you." I said, "Oh, he made us."
Yeah.
So
it's just like those fucked up, weird, levels of abuse, like psychological abuse.
But it's crazy psychological abuse. It's not just, I'm going to gaslight you or I'm going to, manipulate you. It's creative. And the thing is, I don't think he had any perspective to know that was abusive. Like, I don't think in his head he thought I was being bad. He just thought, I have my children, you need to do this. It was very authoritarianism.
Yeah. I mean, and I imagine that's how he was raised. And I never got to talk to, I don't know that grandma would ever have talked to me about any of this stuff. I could talk to cousin Danny, and he was very much that she was in pretty severe denial about, and she was also enabling his father, our uncle. And, I think about maybe calling Aunt Jacqueline before she passes and saying, hey, and I don't know how old she's in her 80s, right? But just
actually, I need to send her, I got her birthday. It's been a month and I need to send her a thank you card and such a bummer with those things.
So, this starts on very, very early. And I still don't know how to process that stuff. Like that level of authoritarian. He didn't think it was abuse because that's probably how he was raised. You do what your children do what you say.
Yeah.
I'm the parent, right? And, after he and mom split up, like there was no one else there was nobody else. It was just you and me and him. And
and because he was on disability, and though he had a few jobs, he was doing some volunteering and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
He was there all the time.
Yeah.
There was not like a way to get away. There was a few babysitters here and there, but it was just anytime you're home, it's him. There's not even a difference it's you go to school, which is awful in itself, at least my experience, and you come home and it wasn't exactly, you just look forward to maybe getting free Oreo cookies. Like that was the whole thing. And specifically 3, that's it.
Yeah. Was that the thing?
I remember like there was like a count 3 or 4 cookies and that's all you get to have. So,
yeah. So it was just this perpetual, or, another thing that I think about, I have an aversion toward, I did for a long time exercise. And I remember one of the big punishments was do push-ups, do jumping jacks, do sit-ups.
Oh, I remember 1,000 squats.
Jesus, I don't remember that.
I remember 1,000 squats. That was the full punishment, like it was some sort of military school.
Yeah.
So, that was, so the psychological, the punishments, the ways of interacting was just very odd. I mean, it's almost as if he didn't have any perspective and he's in a bubble, raising a child with not so much as one book to look at and just fly by the seat of his pants, which, I understand, I have children, so I understand kind of what he's going through, but, I had to have the conversation when I was probably 30. I think I had 3 kids at the time. I'm trying to remember when I had the conversation before he died. And I said, Dad, I would never, ever do that to my kids. What in the actual F were you doing?
And what did he say?
Not much. He showed remorse. Like he was just like, you could tell he was bummed about it. But I think by the time he was 61, 62, when I actually talked to him about it, his brain was, as Elijah says, riddled with dementia.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
it's
he was,
fucking Swiss
by the time he was
cheese.
60, he was gone.
Yeah, and that's
He was
not
gone. His
old.
brain didn't work. I went to the hospice place, and
Mm-hmm.
he tried to hit me multiple times, and he was violent to the people at hospice at the Kai Tai Lagoon.
I remember. I was there briefly.
Yeah,
I would
just
come up on the weekends. Yeah.
completely. And then, but I guess we can go deeper into it, but to kind of bring it back to the summary of what you started with was that why are people using intoxicants? Why are people stuck on Facebook? Why is there such escapism going on? And specifically with chemical addictions. But a good vast majority of it is environment. And I maybe you know the study or don't know the study, and I think I've discussed this with you. So you have a mouse, a lab rat in a cage, and he has his little pellets, and he eats them. And if you give him cocaine, he will just go and keep getting the cocaine until he ODs or whatever else or passes out. And he'll keep doing that because you just give him his pellets and a cage and he's bored. If you give him a giant, huge cage with all sorts of fun, exciting things and rat buddies, he does not go for the water with the cocaine. So there's a lot of environmental, and that could be for you or for me or for anybody. If you're in a great environment, you wake up and you have people that love you and you have good food and you're able to go out and get some fresh air. Or maybe you do a mountain bike, or maybe you go surfing, or maybe you go and find a great movie or book that you can immerse yourself in, and you have support and you're eating well, then your mental status is so much better that you go, I don't really feel like drinking. I don't even feel like it and for me, I know when my life is doing really well, I don't really feel like it because I know the next day, whether I'm happy or not, there's depression that sets in the next day. Always. There's dehydration. There's so many negative aspects that just outweigh any positive, okay, I got a buzz.
Yeah. And I do think that there's a lot to say about environment. I will, for me personally, I think it was intrinsic in my makeup. I think that
like epigenetics type deal, or
I don't know what epigenetics are, but
where it's passed down through DNA.
Yeah. Okay. I believe that there, and what I've come to understand about myself is that there's an allergic reaction that happens. Now, it's not just like, oh, I get hives. Although I used to literally get red flushed all over my chest from drinking too much. And this whole thing, and my face would get
hard booze.
Yeah. Or sometimes beer. Sometimes it would just be beer, but it wouldn't happen all the time.
Allergic reaction from like 10 beers?
From 2, I've gotten it. And I would still drink, and I would try to drink I would drink more thinking that would make me not feel it, but I'd be super hot and flushed. So a literal allergic reaction, but it's that allergic reaction to alcohol that then turns on the fucking fire in my brain and is like, let's go. Let's drink as much as we can. Not let's have a couple and, I don't feel like, I don't want to be hungover tomorrow. And that's what that's how I would drink. So I do believe that environment plays a huge role in it. And that the childhood trauma of growing up with dad exacerbated it entirely. So I think that, in addition to my own, my belief that there was something inside of me already.
And maybe that's your Norwegian and there's Vikings. What about the Scots or the Irish people that are just 1,000 years of drinking?
Yeah. I mean,
so maybe that it becomes ingrained because it's cultural, and the environment on top of it, if you're dealing with tough things, and then it's just, that's what you've been doing for 1,000 years, which is why maybe the Inuits or Asian people or Native people don't do well with alcohol because they haven't had that in their blood, or milk for that reason. Certain people don't, because it's just not, you don't eat it, or gluten.
Yeah.
which isn't your problem, but
No, but I think I get your point. I just don't know, like when you say they haven't done well with alcohol, I don't think people like the Norwegians or Scots or Irish do well with alcohol. I don't really buy into the notion of like holding your liquor or being able to drink a lot as something that is
I guess I meant
worthwhile.
allergic
Yeah,
reactions
yeah,
to it, where they
yeah.
can tolerate milk or wheat or beer because they've been
Sure.
doing
Okay.
it for.
They
So
can
it goes
they have
back
a
to
higher
your,
tolerance.
yeah,
Yeah.
so your genetics, so that your body over generations, and you
Mm-hmm.
keep having people with this tolerance of dealing with a poison in your body,
Mm-hmm.
to where now if you do introduce that poison, you don't quite have maybe a propensity for over drinking, or maybe a propensity for
Mm-hmm.
illness associated with it, like hives. But aren't like Japanese? There's certain groups of people throughout the world that just have a hard time not holding their liquor, but don't even do well with it. Their bodies don't react well, or when they do start to use it, there's the addiction rate is that much higher
Because they're
because of
generational,
genetics.
because of genetics.
Yeah.
I think too, another thing that happens is that's not really genetics, but like the generational trauma and being hit by my father because he was hit by his father, probably because he was hit by his father, and so on and so forth. So this shit
So
has been going on for
look up
centuries.
epigenetics.
All
It's
right.
meaning it just, you can actually pass down things through your genes, and in your life your genes will get changed, so that I may pass down something to Leaf, my youngest child, that I did not pass down to Caleb, my oldest, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a 9-year difference,
Right.
and I did something that edited my genes in just some way. But yeah, so I think
Yeah.
absolutely it's that kind of stuff is passed down, and that could be abuse, that could be violence, but we're talking about chemical
Yes.
dependency.
Right. Well, I just, for me, I think it's all interconnected, and I definitely, like, definitely the the abuse at the hand of our father played a huge role in how I saw the world. I mean, he was never, I don't remember ever feeling like there was a positive role model. When I look back at things like how he dealt with money, you know, money was always something to be hoarded and stashed and tucked away. And I can't trust a bank and a checkbook. So I'm going to pay for, like, I remember going to the bank and he'd have wads of cash and like getting money orders to fucking pay bills. And like, but like, because just have the money in the bank and write the check. But he was not adept enough to keep enough money in the bank, organize a checkbook, and have it there. And so, like, or maybe was it that he couldn't get a checking account? I don't know. I have no idea.
I
But
think my thing is, just to elaborate on that, I think the fact that he grew up in the 60s, well, whenever he did, 60s and
mm-hmm.
into 70s, and he had $300 a night in 1970. And so he just had wads of cash, and that's just what he did everything with. And
Sure, okay.
I don't remember what 1970 was like because I was
You weren't
not
there.
alive, but I imagine cash was king. If I walked into a place with $10,000, I can
Yes.
sign one signature and get a car and walk out of there, and there's not any questions. Go to a car dealership right now and try to buy a brand new truck with $40,000 cash and see what they look like with you.
They're not
Like,
interested in that.
okay, but you're gonna sign all these paperwork, and we got to go send this to the IRS, and
Right.
so I think that was his money.
I hear you, but okay, and I was a bartender for many, many years, and I wait tables right now, and I get paid in cash every single night. And like, it took me a long time to unlearn that because it's not a good behavior with money. At least not for me. So now it's like the money needs to go in the bank, and I do almost everything online. I know this is like, I don't think it's getting off topic because I think it's important, and these are things that I learned from him. And having wads of cash, although it seems cool, and maybe it is when you're going to the bar and you're throwing 20s and hundreds on the bar top, but like, it's not been helpful to me. Like, I never got any like education from him. except for what not to do and how to lie and how to cheat and how to steal. And it always felt like it always felt like anti-lessons with him, you know?
Well, it's interesting you say that because, I tell when I have conversations with my grown son, I can make recommendations, but one of the lines I use is that I can't really tell you what to do, but I can tell you exactly what not to do. I highly recommend you don't do this, because, you do X and Y is going to happen. And, I can make suggestions, but when a child's 19 years old, they go, yeah, you're old and dumb. They're not going to.
Sure. I don't felt like I ever got that from Dad. Not even like a direct conversation. And so
you got the heck out of there as soon as you possibly could, as soon as he let you,
did you? Yeah. Did you watch that video of us at the apartment? And that was right. I'm pretty sure that was 95, right before I left.
You were leaving to go live with Mom.
Yeah.
I remember.
Okay.
I remember. And then shortly thereafter, I think within 2 years, I said, F you as well. Yeah. I'm leaving to go. Like, I'm not hanging out here by myself for another summer. Forget that. And besides the fact that Las Vegas is not good.
No. No offense to anybody listening in Vegas. It was not good then, and it was not good for us. If you have the choice between Ventura, which is right,
a little downtrodden these days as well, versus Las Vegas.
So I want to, there's one time I want to go back in the past a little bit before we get to 95.
93 till infinity.
93 till infinity. I have this memory, and it's like the first time I remember taking in alcohol, and it wasn't a fun experience, and you were there, and I don't recall like all of this. And so this is kind of a
park.
No, I don't remember the park, but
Circle of the Park. There was, I think Party was there. I think Danny was there.
No,
I was 14. Anyway, continue.
No, this was not that. This was something.
Oh, okay.
This was pretty awful. But I remember spilling like white wine in the fridge, and it's spilling all over like some bean sprouts or something. I remember.
Very vague, but okay.
I remember,
but very specific.
Well, that's what I remember. Okay, so we'll say that's what that is. But I remember him getting angry that I spilt the wine, and so instead of like hitting me or something, he made me eat it over the sink. And I remember I would eat some, and then I would stuff some down the sink. And I have this memory of him making you sit.
The beans?
Yeah, I had to eat the bean sprouts that were soaked in white wine. And I was probably like 15 and you were 13. We were living on Lamb Street, North Lamb Boulevard, whatever.
Yeah, because we moved in when I was 14, correct.
Yeah. And I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, him making you like sit naked on an ice cube on one of those bar stools. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to.
It sounds familiar, but maybe that's one of the things I freaking blocked out. But I mean, he was such an imp in the way where there's a picture in my head where he took a Polaroid of me on the toilet taking a poop. Like, who does that to their 10-year-old for fun? Let alone who makes you eat wine-soaked beans over the sink and sit on ice cubes. I don't know why I said it. I think maybe I said an ice cube because he whipped me or something. Why was he sitting on ice cubes?
No, like that was the punishment.
For what?
I don't fucking know. That's my point is that I don't fucking know, right? So like because I was trying to trace back like when was my first drink, and that wasn't like my first drunk, like getting drunk that I can remember, but like that was my first drink, like drinking alcohol or taking it out. I remember getting drunk.
Really, at 15? Interesting.
I might have been 14, whatever. It was I don't know when it was in there. 14. Okay. It might have been 13 because like that was 6th grade too. So it might have been 12. I mean, we could have been 10 and 12. We could have been 13.
So did you intentionally go to drink the wine and then spill it by accident?
I don't think so. No, but I don't remember.
So you spilled the wine in the fridge. Why was the wine open?
I don't know. Probably because you fucking put it in there like that.
Okay. So
are you trying to like?
No, I'm trying to suss out. When did you drink? What did you drink and when did you drink? Your
No,
first
just when
thing
I
of
was eating, when I was eating the
your
wine-soaked bean
first drink
sprouts.
was wine-soaked beans?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's called edamame, John.
I know, right? Exactly. You know, and we laugh about it now, but like that shit was like awful. I remember it. And but I mean there was just this whole series of things. I remember sitting in a Burger King, and we had been like driving around in that fucking van running errands. We were always fucking running errands. Like it was like this nonstop, right? Wasn't it
There was a
always?
lot of errands, it seemed like.
There's too many errands for one person. Like one person, like why were there so many errands all the time? Like that's why you get a checkbook and you just mail out the fucking check, so we don't have to go paying the electric bill at the electric company. It was always shit like that, like all these extra steps to like avoid real responsibility. That's how I see it now. You know, like organize it all, and then instead of like I'm gonna go to the water company to pay my bill in cash, like what the fuck, dude?
Hold on.
Oh,
I'm so
you got
judgy.
it.
I paid my internet bill last month at the
Okay,
internet
it's
place, which is admittedly about a quarter mile away.
fine. Okay, maybe I am being
But
a little
yes,
judgy, but just in my mind as a child, that it was like constantly all these weird little things that today I just go beep, beep, beep. It's on my phone. It takes me 2 seconds. I fucking forget about it. And that's fine. You know, you can manage your money however you want. It just, when I look back, I never got any help. And I had to learn all these things on my own about how to make it easy and simple and pay all my bills on time. You know, I had tons and tons of, I just recently got through paying the Oregon Department of Revenue like $300 from 2002. That's how long ago I lived there. But I remember driving around one of these days, and I remember the three of us sitting in like a Burger King or some shit, sitting in one of those like crappy plastic, you know, booths, and we're eating, and he's just, and I have a lot of memories of dad like eating bad food and being angry, right? So I mean, you can make that correlation. But like maybe it had a lot to do with, you know, maybe you shouldn't have been eating fucking
but there
burgers.
was 29-cent tacos at Taco Bell. We have to get 15 of them.
I know. Yeah, well, this is also where I think that I learned a lot of my issues with food was from him. But I mean, obviously, because I didn't grow up with anybody else, there was no other adult in the world for us, right?
Yeah, well, and you know, our mother didn't have any eating knowledge to impart, and he used it as a reward. He used it as a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being really hungry sometimes, like extra super hungry because you only get so much food. There was like food restrictions. I remember.
I don't know. What
Maybe
was
not
that?
necessarily dinner, but during the day I couldn't have snacks. I couldn't continue to eat. So,
Really?
but anyway, so I'm sorry to just eating bad food and being angry.
So yeah. So in this particular moment, I remember being like, I just want to get the fuck away from him. And like, I don't even remember what the problem was, but he was so mad. And he was like this steaming, angry, like silent, and then yelling at us and then not saying anything. And I remember this old woman he had gotten up to go to the car, and I was there, and maybe you were, I don't know. And this old woman at the booth next to us said, you know, something to the effect of like, it'll be okay. It's going to be all right.
Oh,
And part of me was like angry and like, fuck you, you don't know anything about my life. And now I see like she was just trying to be kind in a moment of like real pain for a little kid, you know. And
no,
so
it's interesting how you have emotions about a lot of this stuff. I think
mhm.
because of
Tell
whatever
me.
my mental um, functions or malfunctions that I have, I
Mhm.
don't share as much. I have sympathy, but it's hard for me to be empathetic. So I don't have a lot of those. I think there was a lot more robotic, just, you know, I have the emotional range of a teaspoon type deal, to where I think a lot of that was just, this is what's happening. And maybe I've internalized it. I've gone to counseling and I've talked with him and expressed things, but I don't think it affected me at such a deep emotional level. I think it's probably psychological in the back of my head that has formulated me, but I think you got not only were you older, you got the brunt of the abuse for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, you're just more of a sensitive person than I am. I lacked tact, and I kind of just, fly off the seat of my pants, where I think that kind of abuse would affect you even more. A normal person a lot, but it would affect you more than it did me. Maybe it's because I was younger, I didn't know, but I think I have a little bit of different experiences where I didn't quite have the anger and frustration that you did. It was more just, let me get away.
Right. I mean, yeah, I
So
hear that.
I'm just saying it's interesting to hear your perspective, because I don't have the emotional, what's the word, vitriol that you might have for him.
I'm still working on it, man. I have written multiple letters and numerous pages about him and to him, and trying to make sense and trying to forgive him, because I don't want to be angry anymore. And this stuff comes up and I'm just like, and I don't feel that way anymore, but at the time I just remember being very resentful toward that woman. But she was just trying to help. And so, but you were talking about food restrictions, like, because I don't remember this.
Oh yeah, no, I remember, after you have dinner, there's no other snacks after that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want some food, no, you can't have that. You can't go make that. Just grab an apple. That's all you have. Or I'm hungry. For some reason, I remember I was dying to have a box of crackers, and no, you can't have those. And so I think it was just one of his ways, whether he was trying to do it out of good or bad, he was doing it just as a way to control, to say, you can't, eat that much. And because I have big time body dysmorphia, and it's directly related to him, because I remember when I'm in the best shape of my life and I'm squatting 400 pounds, I still feel fat and I feel weak and and people look around and, what's wrong with you, James? I'm like, I only work out when I'm sad, so, which is every day. And so I'm doing that, and I still feel really not, I don't have a good body image at all. And I think it stems from him a lot.
You have always been taller and thinner and more ripped than I ever
and better looking.
And better looking. Yeah, I'm telling you. But it's true. And it's so true that we walk around thinking these things, and I'm in the best shape that I've ever been in my life at 43. And it's like still, and I'm, I got a few extra pounds, and I didn't achieve my goals this year because of all the shit that happened, not to mention starting the year with an injury in the back of my leg that I couldn't, that took just months to recover. But and just trying to understand where those things come from, and growing up with a father who was over controlling with food, it makes sense.
And exercise. Do 100 jumping jacks is your punishment. The fuck is that?
I remember,
seems insane in my head as a parent.
Right. I mean, it does. It absolutely does. I remember junior high school, and I'm 14 or 15, right? I was never.
You're more like 13 or 14, but yeah.
13 or 14. Okay. And, I never felt like I always felt overweight, but when I look back and I see pictures, I'm like, I was so skinny. And I remember Dad saying, you need to lose some weight, and making me go talk to my PE coach about getting in weight and all this stuff. And it was really awful because Dad never wanted to help. It just seemed like he wanted to tell me what was wrong and tell me to fix it. And I never felt any guidance or mentorship in that way. Just go ask your coach and fucking figure it out because you're fat and you're 14. And I'm like, well, I guess that's what I am. I guess I'm fat. And, so.
But you know what? That leads me to another topic without going too far off. I don't think, here's my problem with Dad. He never took any accountability. He never took any responsibility for it. And even in his old last dying days, as I sat down with him going, what in the hell did you do? What were you thinking? Why would you treat your children this way? He barely acknowledged he barely, even he was 61 or whatever he was, he barely did. So he just, nothing was ever his fault.
Yeah.
So I think he just didn't take any accountability. If you have a 14-year-old that's overweight, which maybe you were a little chubby, but you weren't really overweight. You weren't, thin or anything, but whose fault is it? Who's feeding the 14-year-old, you dolt?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I also learned very early on that I really loved candy. So I would always try to like sneak away and go to 7-Eleven and get candy. And
I don't have a sweet tooth still, but I do remember sneaking money, saving my money in 5th grade for $2.50. And I remember buying the 3-foot red vines. I don't know if you remember the packages, and because they'd have candy at school. You could buy it even at the whatever the store was.
Yeah.
And I remember buying like 3 or 4 of them and eating them all at once and then throwing them up at school. But I think it was because the treats, whatever the treats were so restricted. Like I said, 3 or 4 cookies. That when I had some autonomy with my money and my time, I ate 2 sandwiches for lunch today. Who the hell needs 2 sandwiches? I still struggle with just what's not bulk eating.
Portions
binging.
control?
No, binging.
Oh, okay. On
anything. I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
I will have 2 sandwiches, 2 fries, and I mean, I'm not really into dessert, and then maybe a salad too on top of it. And who the hell needs 1,500 to 2,000 calories in a sitting?
Nobody. I mean,
I guess
maybe
if
Michael Phelps.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say maybe you're Michael Phelps, but I'm not swimming 1,000 miles a day.
Right.
But I think it's still the restrictiveness creates the binging, and so I think I have that issue as well.
Yeah, I do. I've seen you put it away and like we'll all finish a dinner and you'll get a sandwich on top of it after everyone's done. Everyone's having their little ice cream and you're like, yeah, can I get that pastrami en brie? I've seen it, dude. I mean, I get it. It's not.
Don't tell anybody I had a pastrami today. It was awful. Reuben. I still have a thing for Reubens.
And I mean, I know that we joke a lot, like we laugh about it because, it's tough, but like, I guess, part of why I wanted to talk to you was to try to like understand these things a little bit more about myself and about you. And, I'm growing up, and when I graduated high school and left to go live with mom, like, I don't even know. I mean, I didn't know your experience growing up. And like, you talked about like getting whipped with a vacuum cord.
Yeah, I just didn't remember that one. I remember being hit in the face in a parking lot with bloody nose. I remember lots of yucky. I remember he took me, I don't know what I said. I think I talked back to him directly. And I maybe was like 10 or 11 years old, so I was starting to get a little testicular fortitude. As my balls started to drop. And he took me by my neck and lifted me up and shoved me against the wall and just was like, you're not going to do that. And I haven't been challenged like that with my children, but there's been times that have definitely tested my patience to not, in fact, I'm going off topic. In fact, I apologized to Elijah, just my middle child, for people that don't know, just last week. And we were talking about just growing up and stuff. And the one time I've hit my kid, he was 13 years old, and I gave him a little sunning, if you will, the back of the head pop. And he's 13 because he was being a really awful, horrible human. And he was doing that to his little brother, and it was so offensive to me. It's like, how dare you want him to be in pain? Wait, it's not your way. You just want him to not get his way. So you're fine. You have everything you want. You just want him to get his way. And he was just like, yes. And I just, in the back of the head. But again, he's 13. And it's a little different. And I've never spanked him. And I never really used that as any sort of
tool of manipulation or
tool of discipline. And I don't think you should spank your kids, but I can see how in some instances with some people that might be effective, albeit not constructive.
Sure. But you said you talked to him recently and you apologized for that.
Yeah, and he's like, and he even said this is 3 years ago. He's 16 now, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Dad, it was fine. I wasn't being awful." And I'm like, "No, it's not fine to me.
Yeah.
I think about it all the time. I don't like to do that because I'm so much bigger than you at 13." And that was another thing with Dad. He was just a giant human when I was growing up, and then finally when I hit a growth spurt and I could almost look him in the eye, I was like, I'm not taking this anymore. You're old and frail.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so we got off topic. You're talking about.
Well, I mean, so there was this, I know I'm not asking to go through every single instance of abuse and trauma. Like, I don't think that's helpful or constructive.
We can just have to do a podcast every day for that one.
Yeah. Right. But I guess what I'm most curious about is your experience because I didn't have it, when I was dealing with all my own shit, like in high school, and I fought with him all the time in high school. And like, I was in that, I just remember things like being in that play and him not coming, and we weren't speaking at that time. And so there was long periods where he and I just didn't talk at all. And so like your experience growing up with him, what do you recall? Were there positive moments? Were there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was plenty of positive moments where I know that he, in his moments of clarity, if there ever was one or two, going to Wet and Wild.
The water park, yeah.
Yeah, the water park. Going to the mall where he would go and then drink at Der Baron's 101 beers so he could get his. And let me finish. And saying, here, get a hot dog and some chips, and then here's $20. You have to spend it here because I'm going to get hammered before we go home in the Volare that I have to spray carburetor fluid in to get to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would get drunk at the mall bar and give us money to go play in the arcade. I remember the Wet and Wild, and it wasn't all happy because I remember him making me go down that tall water slide. Yeah, so that was like he would force me to do it because of some bullshit about like getting over my fear of heights, which are still there, by the way. Like even worse. But yeah, so I remember that too, and I just feel like in the car, and I remember that Volare, that green Volare, had a big yellow streak across one side because when we finally got home after he was drunk, he like drove it and scraped against one of those concrete yellow posts that they're there so that you don't go in there. And so it's just like all these, even the potentially good memories are peppered in with like some level of shit.
You better be thankful that Volare be taking groceries home from Albertsons on a bike.
I remember, Jesus, I hadn't thought about that in a long time either. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's shit's hard and people are broke and people don't have, I get it, but like.
But I know he was sick and he was ill.
Yeah.
And he was on disability.
Yeah.
But I look back, he absolutely used that as a crutch to not have to work. And I don't know his level of sickness or how bad he felt, but, and I've even had this when I'm in my worst times. Like, what if I just say I'm disabled because my brain doesn't work and I can't function in a normal job because I cannot be civil. So I wonder if a lot of it was I'm disabled, even though I'm 45 years old and I can still do stuff, to where he's just happy to live off a disability, live in, near Nellis Air Force Base until there's helicopters coming down into our yard because we live in the frickin' projects, and that's okay with you. And I don't know why that's okay. At least get out and move somewhere. And you think he finally did because it was getting so bad.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what his level of, I understand more now, and I've talked to people who've had family members that were on the same medication as them. And it was only a couple of years ago that I had this epiphany and talked with somebody about how severe, because you and I both.
What, you mean prednisone?
Yeah, how severe it was on
Theophylline?
his brain.
The
Yeah.
antidepressants?
I didn't know.
The diuretics?
Yeah.
The pharmacy that was in the medicine cabinet at all times?
Huge. At least 30 bottles of pills, if not more.
Well, and the Dr. Feelgood, 10 different prescriptions, and Valium, and Propanol, Soma.
Which
all those things.
I used to steal the Soma all the time.
I was the best. It was great.
I know, right?
How else are you gonna get through the day without some Soma?
But I mean, we were little kids. We were like 16 and 14, and we're like fucking eating muscle relaxers just to not deal with our father. Like what a fucking.
I'm glad he had those, because I would have been way more stressed. I would take those things at school.
Me too. Yeah.
I would go to school and just give me a few of those and. What Spanish class?
Right. But I mean, it's just really like, even that, again, I know that we joke a lot, but like that level of taking pain medications at that age, like it didn't really do, it alleviated the pain in the moment, but it always came back. It was always there. I always came out of it. I always came out of that haze an hour later and had to go home to see him again. And, there was just this, but the epiphany was like, oh, he was so sick in the head. Like literally everything that he did was probably the best that he could do. Like he didn't have any other tools.
He didn't have any tools. His brain was twisted in some pharmacopoeia going on.
Yeah.
And then adding alcohol to that mix
constantly,
on top of your other depressants. I'm surprised I'm alive and I didn't get run off a cliff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those things. So part of when I had conversation with him when he was older was I kind of gave him the bed, because it's all he could do with what he had. However, at some point I can't make excuses for that.
No.
You can make good decisions, and you can have some accountability and and if nothing else, hey, I get that you're a single parent and that you have health issues, which really are, and I don't know what his mental health issues were before the pills. Let's say he doesn't have any pills, but he has mental health issues from his parents, which were passed on. But he has his physical health. He can't breathe. And I remember him going to the hospital multiple times from that. But you have to at least take accountability and say, yeah, I was a crappy parent. I didn't do as good as I could have been.
Yeah.
As I could have done. So that's my biggest problem with him, was his lack of accountability. And, so my experiences, it was positive sprinkled into a sea of misery, is what that was. And maybe misery is a strong word, but it was miserable at least.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stress and anxiety and fucking fear, straight up fear.
So how I think I dealt with it as a child, not knowing I was dealing with it this way, and we can talk about whatever sort of addictions and things like that. Well, I didn't have my first drink. Maybe I had whatever the hot toddy gave me. I didn't have my first drink until I was 14. I didn't smoke weed until I was 16. I didn't have that when I was super young. But a friend of mine, dear friend of mine, told me one time when I was explaining about my upbringing and, mom being far away, and she's afraid to even come over there to see us because of all the things going on. And so she said to me, because I told her about all of the windowsills by the time I was 10 years old were filled. Everything was filled with plants 10, 11 years old, because at least if I went to the grocery store, I wanted something, he would be okay spending $1 on a plant, because the plants at the time were 99 cents or $1.99. And if that's all he has to do, like I would do with my son, you want the Hot Wheels car for 99 cents, just get it. Let's continue on with our shopping. So I, for some reason, gravitated towards that at 6 years old. And so there was a positive feedback loop from those plants, and propagating them and trying something new and looking at a book and then going to another one. And we went to a nursery. You took me to a nursery when I was 12 years old. I lost my mind. And so I got a positive feedback loop from them. And she said, oh, you were raised by plants. And I said, and I kind of think, because my mom was, far away. Mm-hmm. My father was absent emotionally, physically, and absent-minded in general. And so that was a lot of my coping mechanisms, which, if you really want to talk about it, is probably I'm sure I turned into a positive, but holy crap, I have some sort of weird obsession and addiction with those too. But mm-hmm. I used my weird brain chemistry to, now I'm better than plants now. Without, I didn't take classes for that. I just read books because I shoved my face in that.
I mean, I think that's great. I think that's a beautiful thing to think about, that you were raised by plants and you found
solace.
You found solace, but you found calm and you found peace. And I mean, gosh, I imagine that dealing with plants has got to teach you a lot of patience too, because there's nothing you can't.
They live on a different time zone,
right?
Time continuum,
different dimension. Yeah.
Yes.
Like I went running at the Jack London State Park, which I'll have to take you to. It's fucking gorgeous. It's like amazing. It's a whole nother world.
Jack London, isn't that White Fang?
Basically, but it's
okay.
not Alaska. But there's the ancient redwood, and I didn't even look at the sign to see how old it was, but it was so huge. And it had another redwood coming off of it almost. It was amazing. And they don't let you get so close to them because they don't want to mess up the roots and stuff, but it was just insane to be there with this ancient plant.
That's been there for 1,000+ years.
Yeah. It was a trip. I'm I continue to try to figure out what I call my alcoholic lineage, and dealing with him. And, when there was such a huge level of relief, and I know that you dealt with him a lot more because I moved away, and then he lived with you in multiple places, and he kind of followed you around and tagged around.
Pillar to post with that man. I dragged him. I gave him a car. He wrecked it. Just pillar to post. I think that's why, and I'm sorry to go off. I think that's mm-hmm. why I have a little more closure than you do, because I did more than I should have.
Yeah.
So I don't feel bad about any of that. I did way more than I should have, way more than he deserved, at least.
And I just never was able to. And that's the other thing. I had similar conversations with him near the end of his life, but also even before. I remember trying to have those conversations with him as a young adult, as somebody in their early 20s, and he just wouldn't respond. He would say, maybe I'm sorry was the most, but it never felt genuine, or he never felt interested in making it better in any way. It just was okay.
Because he never sunk in. I don't think he could rationalize it, because he didn't feel like he was wrong. Or he didn't want to, or it was so painful to think about the years of torment and mistakes that he made that he didn't want to think about it. But more likely, he was non-compost Mentos. He had no Mentos left. His mm-hmm. brain was white. You would tell him something, he'd go, I don't remember doing that. And he didn't want to be embarrassed to say, I don't remember. So he'd just go, I'm sorry. Because his brain was it was very, especially towards the end, it was mush. But now I'm realizing, even in my early 20s, he was not, his brain, he was just all like, oh, here, you want to talk about weird stuff?
Sure.
I want to talk about some weird stuff. So I think Caleb might have been 5. I don't know what it was. My kids were super young, and I'm riding the car with him. And Caleb was like, I'm thirsty, and he's complaining, and whatever. He's a kid in the car. He doesn't want to be there. He's thirsty. I'm thirsty. And he's like, here, open your mouth. I'll spit in your mouth. To my child. So there was like, it's weird. Even at, I'm 25 years old. The man is, what did he have me at 35? The man is pushing 60, and he still does that weird stuff. Like, it's just, I think what it was is that he treated his kids as if they were adults that he had full control over. So there was not a understanding of child psychology, of any of that, and there wasn't a respect back and forth. It's like, you respect me, but I'm not respecting you.
Yeah. Yeah. There was none. I never felt respected.
Yeah. No. Well, hey, you're not listening. That's the thing. You're not listening. Remember that one? You're not listening. You're not listening. Oh, well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So my experience is a little bit different. I think I threw myself into that. I think that I was very blessed to not have the full experience you did, where you got caught with cigarettes and he cut your hair yourself, and then he threw away all your clothes and made you get weird, funky.
So,
do you remember that?
That was because he caught me. So I don't remember cutting my own hair.
No, he cut your hair.
He cut my hair.
Fucked it up, and then you had to go to the barber the next day.
So he caught me with cigarettes.
I think that was the thing. You were in high school.
Yeah, I remember the clothes, and I remember how. Okay.
Threw away a lot of your clothes.
Yeah, I couldn't wear my ripped up jeans and my fucking band t-shirts.
Couldn't wear your Faith No More shirt.
Right, basically threw away my Faith No More t-shirt and got me like these preppy like shorts and like button-up shirts and loafers, and this whole idea that he was gonna.
I distinctly remember the loafers and how awful they were.
That somehow this was going to change my behavior by making me wear.
Just a punishment. Was that for cigarettes?
I don't remember. I don't recall.
In my head, I remember it was for cigarettes or something. I don't know what that was. I don't know.
Possibly. Probably cigarettes, maybe. I mean, I guess I probably tried. I used to smoke cloves out behind like the 7-Eleven, thinking that was cool.
I smoked cloves. We never smoked a clove together. What's going on?
Listening to Nine Inch Nails on my Walkman. Just so, I mean, there's that. That's how long ago that was. But
what is that, Downward Spiral?
No, before that was Pretty Hate Machine, man. That was like 91. Okay. And that came out in 89 or whatever, 88 maybe. But so like, yeah, and just near the end of his life and trying to have those conversations and then dealing with the fallout of all the stuff after he died and like having to like go through that awful apartment.
Weird.
And I didn't, and it was so bizarre, you know, like things like, and you told me too, you're like, yeah, I went ahead and, you know, threw out all his porno mags already and, you know, just trying to be fun, give some respect and whatever, man. I don't really think there's a problem with porno mags, like, but, you know, I just like, and having to,
it was a whole box or two full of VHS and whatever it was. And it's just I don't want my dead father, you know, having to deal with, I don't know, if there's authorities or people coming in, I'd be nice just
not to have to deal with that. Yeah. But I mean, just the level of hoarding that went on with him with VHS tapes and with movies and video games and cassette tapes. And I like went through all this stuff. And I remember, and I don't know if you went back to the apartment after I left, but like, I just remember being there one night and like crying and like the smell and like this very distinct smell of death.
Rotten cantaloupe.
Yeah, kind of. And there's like the metallic, but I mean, cause working in the hospital for so many years, I was like, that's the smell of death. And it was really like, and I had the windows open and I'm trying to go through this stuff and trying to find things that are meaningful or important. And it was almost impossible. I think I barely got out of there with like half a box of stuff. And it wasn't impossible because it was sad and tragic, which it was. Like, it was really disturbing and disgusting and awful, but there was just too much stuff. Like, I wasn't going to sit there.
There was too, well, I mean, I had 10 or 15 boxes of his stuff in my basement for the longest time. And I had 45s that I eventually gave away. And I think and I'm going through a permanent grieving process because I don't get to have closure for my situation. But the video games, the systems that really didn't work, maybe they'd be worth something now because the original 1987, whatever it was, but they didn't work. It was a PS1. The CD wasn't going to go down. So I feel bad about some of the old Nintendo or Super Nintendo, but there's so much stuff that I just said, forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have 1 or 2 boxes that I did actually of his that I took. So I have a few trinkets for sure of his. Like maybe I think I have a glasses case, a wooden bowl, a little the little tin with all his Black Angus pins and Nixon now, weird stuff like that. I have some of that, and I have baseball cards, and so I have his Dodger cards.
Yeah, I've got the childhood Bible, and I think I have like an ID from the Sahara when he worked at the Sahara in Las Vegas. But I do think so. You say that you live with not being able to find closure with it, and I really, if I may.
Oh no, I have closure with Donald John.
Okay.
Not Trump, Staley.
Mm-hmm.
I have closure with Dad for sure.
Okay.
I'm not probably having any closure with my own situation, which that's a different podcast, but
mm-hmm.
So I imagine that I was going off somewhere with grief, and I don't know why I said that, but I imagine that you are not able to do that. I don't know that you confronted him the way I did.
No, I didn't really. I mean, I was there for some period of time, like in the hospice, and I remember trying to have conversations with him. Again, I remember having here's another, memory of angry fast food, of like going to a McDonald's somewhere in like Port Townsend and him, I guess the Angus burger was the big thing or some shit like that. And I remember him getting that and just being like, what is this piece of shit? And not finishing it. Or when he came to visit me in Seattle one time, and he came to the bar and I was bartending and I was really excited and proud of myself. And he's like, give me a Bloody Mary. And I was like, I should have known my dad is the kind of asshole who gets a Bloody Mary at fucking 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah, and, stop with your mixed drinks. Just get a beer or a whiskey. God damn it.
Well, but I mean, I worked in a fancy cocktail bar. I was like, man, I'll make you anything. Like, don't you want it? And he wanted a Bloody Mary. And I'm like, this is just, whatever. And then he didn't even like it. Like, he told me, he's like, yeah, it's not good. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like there's no pleasing you. And so yes, I guess I have a lot more to, now that I'm just thinking about things to deal with closure. But the thing that's brought me the most closure is, one, realizing that his brain wasn't there. And two, writing it out, writing him letters and writing pages about him. And about like, okay, I'm ready to let it go. I'm ready to forgive you. I'm ready to move on with my life because, one of the guys I interviewed, this guy named Mishka Shubaly, and he's a musician and an author. And I got to sit with him, person to person. And he had this whole thing about, him trying to come to find closure with his father who's alive. And dealing with very similar things. And he's like, I would imagine you're probably going to have an easier time finding closure with your dead father because you're not going to have him there to refute, rebuttal, to be constantly cantankerously, like trying to fight you on closure. And I was like, oh, and it made a lot of sense to me. Okay, well, so now it's just my thing to deal with. I don't have to actually have him involved. And I guess I never had to have him involved in the first place, but it's just easier now that he's gone, which is a terrible thing to say. And it's not the way that I think anybody should feel about their parent. Well, I mean, I guess it depends on who your parent is, but you remember the huge sense of relief that everybody had when he died. I mean, I don't know if you did, but that's
no. Well, yeah. I did, because I had to deal with the freaking burden of that, because he lived down the street from me.
Yeah.
And Mom and I used to always make a joke. I think it was a Kids in the Hall skit. It was like, I know when Mother's going to die. Never. And so it was, I know when Donald's going to die. Never. Would you just take him already?
Yeah.
Because he was in and out of hospice. He would be there for 3 months, and then I'd have to go over to his house, and then his house was still there, and then he'd be at the house for 6 months until he was just such a downward spiral of TV dinners and rotten cantaloupes and trash and tissues and just playing video games all day long, to where it's just like, this guy's not living. He lost his license because he kept getting in accidents and hitting things, and he had to take the test 3 times. And then he finally, because he wouldn't give it to, because he kept failing tests because his brain was mush, he took it the 3rd time, and the next week he died, and his license was in the mail that I checked.
Jesus. Yeah.
He told me in this 92 Camry that gifted him, he told me there's a house in a hill in Port Townsend that I think he floored up the hill or down the hill. I think he floored it up the hill and like almost got air, and he couldn't stop at the right time. He was still driving erratically at 65 years old, just flying.
Which is not old.
Not that old. I know plenty of 65-year-olds that are rocking it.
Right. So, I mean, and that's, well, I was going to say something else. Another thing that, when I think about, because many of my problems psychologically, my issues with eating, my issues with money, my issues with relationships, all those things stem from, not just my alcoholism, but growing up with Dad. And I remember too, having to make multiple phone calls. I guess there was like something, he had some money sitting in some trust somewhere, like for being a waiter and for working for the fucking, what do you call it? Union?
It was
some Las Vegas
culinary union.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was like, it wasn't a huge amount, but $20,000 would have helped his kids out.
No, and I remember trying that, and I couldn't get it either. There was no way to get it.
There was nothing. I'm making phone calls and like stuff like this, and there were letters, and if he had just signed the paper and sent it off, like that's all they needed or something. There was some issue where it could have been simply taken care of if he had just taken care of it. And it's like, I'm not mad because I didn't get $10,000 10 years ago, but like just the act that it was, again, just not taking responsibility and just leaving it. Like, why didn't you just fucking do this? And always having some excuse about not doing something or not having, and it's so sad to me that you and I had to deal with that as children and then grow up and fucking and I have to figure it all out on our own. And I wasn't there for you. I felt like I left as soon as I could. And like, I don't even know how, but I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here.
Well, I looking back, I don't have any ill will or blame, but there was a little bit of like, wait, what the fuck? You can't go yet. Don't leave me with this guy by myself. And I think, I don't know if it was, I think it was the very next year. I think I did 1 year with him by myself, which was way too intense. And then I was like, I'm out. I got to go by. I'm gone. And just I remember actually, because I was working at Plant World at like 14 or 15, and I had saved a bunch of money, and I think I was 15 years old, and I had like $3,000 or $4,000.
Jesus,
so much money, because I would save all my paychecks and I'd get tips, so I never touched my paychecks. So there was a whole summer worth of money saved. And I was just spending I've got $20 or $50 a day in tips. It was not
Wow,
bad.
that's great.
And then I think I was getting paid $6.75 an hour at the time. So it was a pretty decent little job if you're working 8 hours a day, 3 days a week, or whatever it was during the summer. And so I had enough money, and I thought to myself, I was like, I don't even I had this epiphany. I distinctly remember going, I have access to my account. I can go to the credit union wherever I want and take my money out without my parents there, because it was my money and they knew me because I would go deposit my checks.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I could just get on a bus,
Wow.
whatever. I could just be gone. And so I think I had that epiphany, and I said, okay, I'm not going back to school in Las Vegas. I'm leaving in August. I think I just turned 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I said, bye. I was like, now that I'm 16, there's no reason you can't hold me here against my will, and I'm leaving.
You told him that, or that's just what you thought?
That
was your epiphany.
That was my epiphany. I didn't tell him that I'm leaving. I didn't say it that way. I just said, hey, I don't want to be here. I'm going to go live with Mom. I don't want to be in Las Vegas. Sorry. And so I had some sort of power and autonomy by having a few $1,000s in the bank to go, I can do it. Bye.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there was a level of confidence that came with that, of like having,
So it is so sad, the childhood is sad, and I think there's a lot of tragedy, and life is suffering in general. I mean, if you look out in the world, there's zebras that are getting eaten by lions, and lions that are hungry because they can't catch a zebra. That's just what life is. That's what makes things stronger. And people go, oh, it's going to get easier. Don't worry, it'll get easier. And I go, fuck you, it's not getting easier. It only gets more difficult. What happens is you get stronger. You get more brave. You rise to that occasion. Sorry. Okay, and it might get easier if you make the good decisions, and you can make it a little easier, but when you make good decisions and all of a sudden now you have more money, well, I got to work on more taxes, and then what do I do with this? And then I have money, and I'm worried about losing it. Like, if you think about it, if you have Elon Musk, this is it was a Chris Rock joke.
Mm-hmm.
If Elon Musk Bill Gates woke up tomorrow and looked in his bank account and saw what Joe Rogan had in it, he'd jump off a fucking building going, oh, no, I'm poor. And you only have 100 million. Well, I had 100 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's that level of, once you have more responsibility and more stuff, then it doesn't get easier. It just you get braver and stronger.
Sure. I think too, in that joke and in that thing is it's also about I think that it's about being grateful for what you have, rather than saying, oh, I don't have this. And I really do believe that, like, too, that the scarcity mindset is just that. It's a mindset. And the older I get and the more that I deal in sobriety and recovery and trying to figure all this stuff out, and I hate for it to be true. And so when something doesn't go my way and I'm like, I need to figure this out and I need to change my mindset about it. And when I do, things change for me. And so I think that's part of it. I just don't discount I can't discount the huge hole that our Father put us in from the get-go. And it's been, for me,
start back at the starting line. You're way back far. Yeah.
And so when I think about how it's like directly affected, like popping pill, I used to eat antihistamine before I ever got the muscle relaxers, because I could kind of feel sleepy and dozy. And so I used to hide them in the sock drawer in our bunk beds.
Oh,
so
I still don't do well with those, but yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But so I mean, I just know that I'm just trying my best to forgive him. And I know that that childhood trauma plays a huge role in my alcoholism, in my addictive behaviors around food, my inability to get good sleep still at 43, to have to like really
regiment. You don't have night terrors anymore.
There's that too. I used to have those. Where did those come from? abuse.
I think those are specifically, I know I'm kind of doing
Sure,
it
go
off
ahead.
topic here, but I think those were specifically from the trauma that you had. Because I know I had a few of those, but I think there was so much trauma that you had multiple ones. And I remember flipping out, and you were being violent, and you were like 11 years old, 12 years old, maybe I don't
Waking
know
up in the
old
middle of the night screaming and not knowing. I didn't remember any of it. I was
Yeah,
completely
well,
just asleep.
I was sharing a room with you, and you're jumping on the bed, and Dad comes in all freaking out, and you're like, "Fuck you, go fuck yourself! Fuck you, go fuck yourself!" Over and over, and hitting him, and you're like 11 or 12, and you're flipping out. I'm going, "What?" And that's just mental anguish and trauma. What else could that really be? Honestly,
Nothing. No, I mean,
what else? What
looking
else
back,
could that
at
be?
an 11-year-old?
I I look at my children and the trauma that I'm sure I've put them through and I've done. Nothing like that.
But you are self-aware enough to be able to come and speak to your children and say, "Hey, I'm sorry." Like that simple act of being genuinely not just apologizing, but feeling. You said earlier when we were talking at the beginning something about being sympathetic but not having a lot of empathy. But
Yeah, it's hard for me.
But I don't believe that you don't have any, even if it's hard for you, because
high functioning sociopath.
I don't believe that exactly, James. But okay, I think
no, it's a Sherlock Holmes joke reference. Anyway,
okay.
Continue.
Yeah, he was also a cocaine addict. But
among other things.
Among other things, this is gonna be a 3-pipe problem. Bring me my syringe. But I mean, just that sheer fact that you are willing to not behave like your father, that it's not in you. I mean, that's something too that, for me, even though I feel, the alcoholism is inside of me. I don't have to give into it. I don't have to give into those things, and I can change my behavior and change those cycles. And when I look at how much your kids love you and always have, even in the worst, I mean, they're teenagers, 2 of them. So, I mean, it's, how we were as teenagers.
You remember being 19?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have a couple months of a 19-year-old. I don't even know how that happened, but it's there. So
right. But I mean, but the fact that they have always loved you, and I didn't feel that way about my dad.
No, I don't think they're. It's such a weird thing. I'm trying to formulate all these thoughts and feelings as we speak on the fly. There's a ton of them.
Well,
I didn't have a lot of affection for him. I didn't really miss him. I didn't have a lot of fondness for him. But there was a familiarity that I think which is why I have some of his stuff towards kind of that familiarity. I think that's may have all it really was. There wasn't a lot of respect. I don't remember being taught things. I don't remember being advised on life. You want to learn to swim, I'll throw you in the pool. That's what I remember. So yeah, there's not a lot of fond, awesome memories. And during this podcast, this conversation, I'm starting to realize that I have a hole too, but I think I've compartmentalized it, and I don't think it's not in the forefront of my head. It's more, they're just remnants that I just work hard on having discipline with, to go, hey, if you had a 2,000 calorie meal, guess what? You get a little snack, and that's your whole freaking day, dude. Sorry. You just get remnants. And,
You mean of his controlling, of his abuse.
Yeah. So, and I've learned to kind of come to terms, and I've learned to balance. I'm still awful, but I learned to balance a lot more things. I'm not great with my addictions, but they're pretty well managed. I have this pesky nicotine thing that I hope they ban these vapes here in the end of the year. So, it's funny because I'm almost in the point where I don't care. I'm not even upset about being addicted to it. It's only just that it costs too much money.
Yeah.
It's too expensive. I don't mind. It keeps the voices at a dull roar in my head. It really does. And I see people, again, I'm going off again, but I see people just with no headphones on, they're working, staring at the sky, and smiling. I'm like, what the fuck are you smiling about? We're at work, aren't you? Isn't there a circus in your head too? No, there's not. I'm just thinking about dinner. What?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's that hole that's still there that I push through every day. And most days I wake up, and if I shower at night usually, and I'll go and I'll drop to my knees in the bathtub, not in the bathtub, over the bathtub, and soak my hair with cold water, just get all the little fuzzies out, and do my face and say a prayer and go, today's going to be all right. And so starting, and I don't know what it is about being on my knees and getting the baptized every morning and going, let's try this again. And sure enough, by noon, there's a shitstorm swirling, but at least I start fresh every day with something, with a good mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really just positivity. And I laugh to keep from crying, but just, you know, you can always change your attitude towards something. And you're more disciplined than I am, but I think you've, in some ways, because the moderation can happen, maybe now you're going towards the other way. And I don't think you overdo your activities or overdo your food, but maybe
Sometimes
there's some substitution for that with the discipline of somewhere else. Because I was addicted with my exercise routine and food, like to the T. So there's always that balance, and you can't just play with plants. You can't just go surfing all the time. You can't just do music all the time. You have to moderate it in any sort of addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I just, you know, for me, it's, at least with alcohol, I mean, that's everything else I kind of have to do. Like, you have to move, you have to eat, but you know, I can't, there's no moderation with booze.
You can sit in the bed like Sloth from Seven and
That
wait to
doesn't,
die.
no, that too. I'm not interested in that one. I'm not interested in that life at all anymore. I used to slowly, you know, I used to talk about it as like drinking and eating bad and just living horribly was just this sort of, it was really like this suicide installment plan. Just kill myself a little bit every single day, and hopefully like one day I won't wake up. And that was awful.
You're better off just walking out to the ocean and keep walking.
Well, I mean, and so instead I like to run, and I like to eat things that are healthy for me. And I like to, like, you know, try to be a good brother and son and, you know, boyfriend and coworker and friend. And, you know, but basically I like to, you know, maintain my relationships as well. So, I mean, it's just, this is going to probably last the rest of my life, dealing with my father.
Well, so here's the difference. Mm-hmm. Now that I think about what you're saying, is that there's a difference of me dealing with my father, mm-hmm. which I don't really deal with. I don't really think about it. I don't have trauma in the forefront. All I'm dealing with is the ramifications of my upbringing. I don't even put him as at fault or responsible, even though he fully is, but I don't process it that way. I process it that I am now 41 years old. I've been on my own, doing my own thing for 20 plus years. I need to go get counseling. I need to deal with my stuff. And whatever baggage I have, just like everybody else has baggage, it's my responsibility to fix that and work through it. And mm-hmm. It's not his fault or anybody else's fault. This is what I got. This is the cards I got dealt.
Yeah.
Now I need to work through it, which you could do in any. Some people will need to go on antidepressants. Some people need to do counseling. Some people need to run. Some people need to lose themselves in music or whatever it is. And so long as it's a healthy it's healthy, that's great. But that's where I'm at, where I'm just dealing with the ramifications, but I'm not dealing with him.
Right.
That's not, I don't feel sad. None of that really, I don't deal with him. I deal with me as far as that goes. So I think you're in a different spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. I like the way you put about the circus in your head too. That's something like, well, I don't take the cold baptism. Although I think it's a great idea. I definitely have my own prayer routine, and I've been writing 3 pages a day minimum since like 2000.
You have the Oompa Man in your head too, right?
Something like that. I mean, that on top of the tinnitus from going to too many concerts as a young man. So there's a constant ringing in my head on top of the circus.
You don't have an Oompa Man in your head too?
Yeah, right now I'm just thinking about dinner. Yeah, so I think that's definitely something too. I hear that a lot from other alcoholics too when I talk to them and listen to them, and they're like, yeah, man, it's fucking always just rolling in my head. So I I just appreciate your perspective, and I know that like we had very, very similar but very different experiences, and it was fucking, for me, our dad was had a profound impact and influence on my life, for better or for worse.
See that.
So, and one of the things I love, like when I talk to other recovering alcoholics and I hear about parents who get sober and repair the relationships with their children, and I'm like, that's such a beautiful thing. And part of me, there's still the part of me that's like, why couldn't I fucking have that? But the better part of me, the higher part of me, the higher self is like, I'm so happy to hear that, because it's going to make such a difference in your children's lives and your grandchildren,
Being accountable and taking responsibility for what you've done. And that's what I found with him. It's just, and I feel lucky. And I think in a way I saw it coming. Not in a way, because he lived with me in Orange County. I moved to Texas. I moved to Texas to Port Townsend, and I carried all his shit around, and I had his car in the back of my truck, the whole thing. And I think, for better or for worse, I don't know why I felt obligated, other than he's just my father, whether he deserved it or not. But I saw his decline.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was coming, and I distinctly remember having going, I should say my piece. I need to have my conversation, because he could be gone next week or in 3 years. But I'm going to tell him that, what the fuck? You made a ton of mistakes. You haven't seemed to repent. You don't seem to think about it. It doesn't seem to bother you. Why? How, in any way, shape, or form, is that okay to raise your children like? And I'm not the best father. I try really hard. I'm dealing with my own stuff right now, but having that and saying my piece, and then realizing that he's still the same person, going, he's not going to take accountability for it. He's not going to do anything other than, yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry. Yeah, I shouldn't have. And that's about it. He wasn't completely unremorseful. He wasn't but it was still half-hearted. And I don't know if it's because he doesn't remember or his brain was too mushy at the time, but he didn't seem engaged. He was still disconnected from all of it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I definitely appreciate what you say about like accountability and, taking accountable for your own actions. I mean, that's part of definitely part of my getting better was realizing that and going, oh, I had a part in all of this. Even all my justifiable resentments. It's like, well,
yes.
What's your part in it? What did you do, John? What is your part in it? Well, I'm just angry because it's their fault and they're the bad ones. And it's like, well, why are you interacting with them? Oh, you mean I should just remove myself from the situation? Okay.
No more noxious stimuli. I'm done with the noxious stimuli. I don't want to deal with that.
So I do, and I want to wrap this up, but I love being able to have these conversations with you, and we'll do it again off the record.
Well, I'm or on the record, I'm happy to go into chemical dependency. and what that does to your brain and all sorts of different things. Because I know maybe this is specifically about alcohol, but I still have chemical dependencies. I know you don't, but I still deal with it on a daily basis, trying to moderate it, trying to work myself, trying to do everything. And I don't know what you've experienced because I don't know your fast and easy lifestyle, but even through raising children and things like that, I've done my share and your share too. And, you know, there's some different perspectives that I can say where some chemicals actually worked and helped me to advance my mindset. Others did not. And, you know, anyway, so I'm happy to have another conversation that isn't about our father.
Yeah.
That's more focused on different ways of having people help themselves and getting better and realizing that it may never go away. It may never get easier, but it's up to you to get stronger. The people out there, like, you can go and find help. Reach out and make good decisions. It's not easy. It seems impossible, insurmountable. You know,
that's what I found.
Baby
for
steps.
Sure. Dr. Marvin, Dr. Leo Marvin. What about Bob? Oh,
that's exactly it, baby.
Therapy's good too. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that because on a positive note.
That until next
baby
time.
Steps. Until next time.
Nice talking with you. And
you too. I love you.
I love you too.
Give Mom a hug for me.
I will. We could go on for hours, I'm sure, about this topic because so many more memories.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and end this, and I'll give you a call in a second.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks again for listening. Our music, as always, is by Neglect. You can find more of his stuff at neglect.bandcamp.com.
And you can find us on all social media platforms that matter: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can reach us at aisforalcoholic@gmail.com.
Talk to you later.
Yeah.